So I know that you grew up and you had a lot of different choices growing up. You were going to play. You were an athlete. You were playing football, and you were doing music stuff. Why did you choose to pursue music as a young man?
Well, my mother was a very gifted coloratura soprano. She was classically trained and was in fact in 1923 scheduled for a European debut. But her father passed and her mom just really couldn't let her go. That's, for a young girl in 1923 to be leaving a small Texas town is pretty difficult to do. So anyway, she stayed home and found my dad, and they got married, and the rest is history. Here I am. So I grew up with Victrola playing Gallicerci and Caruso pretty much all the time. So I had an ear for listening to music, but it was pretty much all classical. And then I had the great benefit of having in an extremely small town a band director that took a particular interest in me and switched me from an instrument that had no future to a clarinet, and we started working. And then he got drafted in World War II and left us with another fine musician who was actually just our choir director. And now I think there were 79 in my graduating class. So this is a very, very small town.
This is San Benito, yes?
San Benito, Texas, yes. Between Harlingen and Brownsville, and 15 minutes from the border of Mexico. So anyway, that's my background. I was just blessed to have someone to take an interest in me all along the way.
That's incredible. What was it like growing up in San Benito with your mother, a classically trained musician? That must have been incredible.
It was. She was singing in the house along with Gallicerci pretty often, and it was a musical house. My dad could harmonize with her on some of the more contemporary songs, but yeah, it was great. But we did everything. It was the Great Depression. I was born in 1931, and no one had much of anything, and then right into World War II with rationing and so on. So we pretty well stayed hitched. As I grew and had the opportunity to go to some all-state bands and go to some musical competitions for high school students, I connected with more and more people from some of the larger schools, and that was another bonus and advantage to me. And then my former band director came back to San Antonio, and after the war, and that would have been 45 or 46. And so now I had a connection. My then current band director, who had just gotten out of the Army as well, recognized the value of the relationship between the three of us. So with the help of the San Antonio former band director and current band director, am I confusing you adequately?
No,
Rabbi?
Not at all.
They were able to expose me to more, in a broader view of music.
Now,
And
Paul,
also go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
And also we had a really, really fine big band in Matamoros across the river in Mexico that we were able in those days to drive to as easily as we could to Arlington or Brownsville, and listen and sit in and so on. So I had that benefit as well.
So crossing the border to hear Chucho Hernandez was not a big deal, right?
Nothing at all. Yeah, just a piece of cake. Yes.
And
Very different than it is now.
are you fluent in Spanish also?
Ya hablo poquito, sí. Bastante.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Now, I think that you're a man who is sort of possessed in many worlds, which is really great. You went to go study engineering in Texas A&M, and you also took some music classes at a place that is dear in my heart, University of Colorado.
Yes.
So
yes, I did.
So what was that? What is it like as somebody who also likes to sort of hold worlds together? What was it like to hold the engineering world and the music world together? And how did you find your way forward in excelling in both of them?
Let me fast forward and then I'll back into that. Around 1996, I suppose, I got a blind call from someone at A&M that I didn't know, asked me if he and the dean of civil engineering could come over and talk to me. Of course, come and talk. So we sat, and the question ultimately came up. The real reason that we're here is that we are concerned that we're developing tunnel vision, left brain engineers, that our curriculum is so science oriented that there's no room for the broader deal. Can you give us any insight as to how what might have helped you to become more entrepreneurial, broader in your thinking? In their words, to work outside of the box of engineering and excel in the engineering field. I'd have to have some time to think about that. So I did, and it came to me a few days later that it was the music, that it was the exercise of the right brain, So I got back and told them that's what I thought. So what can we do to do that? And it has to be extracurricular. So, at that point, I realized now I can back up, is that I was just in a household, the only child in the Depression era, with an artistic mother and a scientific father, if you will, who appreciated each other's position or so on. So that I'm a big advocate of both. I think our educators, when we have the opportunity to do both, I think that doesn't fit everyone. Don't misunderstand me. I mean, there are many people that need to be focused in the science. And of course, our music educators and the performers and so on, they have to put everything they have into the artistic side. That's who they are. But for those in the middle that have that talent and want to use it, want to play, our advocacy is both.
That makes a lot of sense. And let me ask then, since you sounds like you had extraordinary parents, what did they think about you saying, "Hey, I'm going to go tour around with particular bands that you met up in Boulder a little bit? If you're going to go sit in with Texas Bennick and Claude Thornhill," what did they say to that?
Oh, they loved it. Really? Every opportunity that they had to hear me, they did. But of course, they couldn't travel in those days. There just wasn't enough money, and there were fuel rationing. There were all sorts of problems. But it's nice you asked that question, because I was looking through. I have never been a collector of memorabilia, but my older daughter is, and my mother was. So the things that I have of my mother's I'm giving to her, I'm sorting in it. Each Christmas, I'll give her another packet of things. And this very last Christmas, I came across some letters, and I'd completely forgotten this, but in those days, big bands didn't record. They recorded, but they were live radio broadcasts. And I came across letters to my parents saying, we're going to be broadcasting from such and such a ballroom in Denver, Colorado, or wherever it might be at such and such a time. And there was, it's very famous, there was a large tower and just across the Mexican border, across by Reynosa, that was able to steal all these airwaves, and they were available to the people in the Rio Grande Valley. So my parents were able to pick up radio broadcasts of these bands that I was in playing in various, and they loved it.
That's extraordinary.
They were big supporters. They were big supporters.
So did you think that that's what you were going to do? I know you were moving back and forth between civil engineering and music. What was it like to tour when you were a young man? Did you see that as a life for yourself?
No, that's another interesting question. I loved it. There's no bigger thrill, well, maybe one or two, but than standing in front of a big band with a brass behind you and free, to play. I mean, it's just wonderful. And it's such a big thrill to hear or feel a response from the audience for something that you're doing. And to play with great musicians, it's just absolutely wonderful. But there was never a time that I wasn't ready to come off the road, after a month or two or however long on the road it might be. I learned something from that road life wasn't for me. It got boring, if you will. The routine of playing the same song. I was criticized by an audience member for not playing exactly the same solo that I'd improvised the night before or something, So before, for whatever reason, no, the life on the road didn't appeal to me. But until I had graduated from A&M in the ROTC and immediately set into the Korean War, I still have not made a decision. And for 2 years on active duty, as an officer, I was unable to perform. In those days, playing, it was beneath the dignity of an officer and gentleman or whatever that stuff was. So I didn't. So I was still considering going to Eastman. I had an opportunity for scholarship and pursuing the music degree. So I really didn't decide and make that decision until 1954 when I got out of the active duty from the Army.
Wow, that's incredible. I'd like to speak about that chapter. However, before we go from here, did you have a chance to get to know Claude Thornhill much or no?
Yes, I did.
I would love, because I'm such a Gil Evans fan. I would love to.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about him?
Yeah. Well, when I was on the band, I'm going to talk about the band just a little bit. And that'll tell you something about Claude, and then back up into him. They had just come off that incredible Gil Evans book that was broader. It had a clarinet book separate from the lead alto book that Buddy DeFranco played. Hey, follow Buddy DeFranco? Okay, yeah, right. It had a French horn. It was a very large ensemble. They had just reduced it to a normal size bass band. 5 reeds, I think 3 trombones and 3 trumpets probably. They combined the lead alto book and the clarinet book. And they had both of them on the stand, and here I am, sitting in, and with arrows, go to the clarinet. They hadn't combined the books yet. But Thornhill, Claude was an amazing person. Of course, he wouldn't have been working with Gil Evans if he wasn't, a really, really deep musician. But he told me, and I loved this phrase, that here's what I want from you. I don't want that hard lead sound. I want all five of the reeds to be balanced. And how I want the sound, instead of driving to the back of the room, I want the sound to flow like a drop of cake coloring in a glass of water. I want it to fill every atom of the room equally. Well, I mean, clearly mechanically you can't do that, but if you mentally, that's what you're trying to do. Isn't that a beautiful thing?
It is.
So it tells you something about him. Another thing about Claude, he was very, very soft-spoken. He didn't have a lot to say. But I would say, not frequently, but often had a jam session after the gig. We'd be invited out to a club or a home or whatever it might be to have a bite and play some. Claude liked to go to those and liked to listen. And then he would do his critique. And he didn't do it from the performance on the stage, but he'd tell us something about our playing. And in fact, in one instance, with two really, really fine saxophone players, he had them switch instruments, an alto for a tenor and a tenor for an alto. Both of them were used to playing the other instrument more frequently, but he said, no, I want you to switch. And he was right. I mean, they went on to be very, while they were fine reed men, they made their reputation on the instrument that he suggested. Hmm. Does that tell you something about Claude Thornhill?
Oh, it sure does. It sure does. Did you have a chance to intersect with Gil Evans at the time too?
Did not. Never did. No.
So you went straight to A&M, and then you were in ROTC, and then you found yourself in Korea.
Yes. Well, I didn't go to Korea. I got as far as Camp Stoneman for debarkation, and they canceled my orders. But no, I stayed stateside for the entire active duty tour.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank God. And that's quite a time to and you have your options open, as you say, and then you decided to go back to South Texas after your obligation.
Yes.
So and then you seemed to make a choice at that point. You got into business.
I did. I got into business, and just again, a gift from God. A really, really fine arranger and orchestrator got transferred down there to service tech machines for Remington. At that time, were big in the early stages of computers and so on. The Harlingen Air Base was still active and had a big demand for this sort of service. So he came down there, and I got again a blind call. I hadn't really played in 2.5 years. And he said he was putting together a band. He wanted me to play lead alto. And I said, I'm pretty well past that. I haven't played in a while. And he said, I'm told you're the only person that can do it, can play this book. Well, that'll hook you pretty good. So I got the horns out and went to work and put together a pretty good territory band.
This is the Dick Hurlburt band, correct?
Yes, Dick Hurlburt, yes.
So you were working in the construction world and also putting together a territory band.
Yes.
Wow, that's really
Yeah.
incredible.
Yes, it was, and it did clearly become too much, but it took care of itself. With rock and roll coming along, big bands started losing their allure for a number of reasons. Hire 10, 12, 15 people when you can put 3 or 4 on the stage with guitars. No real call for horns, and so that's slow. And dancing, people started slowing down on the dancing. And another thing, the South Texas, at least, big parts of Texas were dry at that time, so there were a lot of private clubs, and we called them dance clubs, and they were. And just in Harlingen alone, there were 3. So, and each of them would have a dance every month, and the Air Base was still active, the Officers Club, the NCO Club. There were a lot of opportunities, but all of those things faded away. And by 62, 63, early 60s, there was no more market for a big band, and for that matter, for horns. Really, it was all guitars.
But you stayed in South Texas, obviously, and took care of business. And
Yes.
what's your connection to the Weslaco High School?
Well, I had started my own companies. In retrospect, I had an occasion to have to dig this information up. During my career, I started 14 different companies, so hence the concept of entrepreneurship. But the headquarters I established in Weslaco, and so I had a connection to Weslaco. Again, a very small school, and their music program was very solid, but they really didn't have the basis for what was called at that time a stage band, a big band. Mm-hmm. So for some reason, I got involved in organizing, helping. There were other people that in the music department that did the day-to-day work, but it was just something that they needed and the kids wanted, and it worked very well. We were able to, for 4 years, to take them to competition at Kingsville, where there was at that time a university called A&I University. It's now Texas A&M Kingsville. But that's a nice little road trip to take a 15-piece band to. And the clinicians were Maynard Ferguson or Woody Herman, or somebody that, could really inspire them. And so it was a very, very successful step.
It's where perhaps the love of big band, or the instruction of big band and horns, was preserved after maybe rock and roll took over the marketplace.
Exactly. Yes.
So, and that continued. Did you continue to play after you kind of stopped performing with the Dick Hurlburt band? Did you still play out, or just on your own?
After those days, in and out. I would only play. I never played professionally. I would maybe go to a session, somebody's house or something, just play. But no, I never played professionally again. But I did continue to play in spurts, off and on. But it's like so many things, God gives you the gift, but then you have to hone it. And I knew that if I just practiced an hour a day, I was never going to get any better. And the discipline to keep on playing. So I found more of an outlet for my love in working with people that do play, and seeing how I can help young ones to grow and the older ones to keep it going.
Well, it's really quite incredible. I mean, with you and your wife, Betty, you've been quite an active philanthropists in really nourishing and incubating and helping various music festivals and groups come together. So let me ask you, Paul, if you don't mind, what does jazz mean to you? I know you had talked about it sort of being the extra edge in the engineering nexus that you held, but what does jazz itself mean to you?
Well, obviously I had a relatively successful career in engineering. But the love of jazz is greater. That's a really, really difficult question. I guess, I don't know, Neil. I don't know how to answer that. It means a tremendous amount. I mean, obviously, God, family, friends, jazz, and I can't, and again, I can't weigh the two, the engineering, but I will say that the engineering, to me, I was always looking for an artistic, a new way, a better way to do something. That's where my thrill came, from engineering, not just adding to it and coming up with four. Am I making any sense at all?
Of course. Thank you. So do you listen to classical music still?
Yes. No, it's usually, probably my first thing is big band jazz. Mm-hmm. Secondly would be ensemble jazz, and then classical.
Do you ever? I'm just curious. Do you have any recordings of your mom singing?
I don't. I don't. I know it. I know, and I don't of me. I had some playing with some professional bands, but they were on wire recorders or even on 78s that have not been republished. So I don't have anything historical about my mom or me.
How does that? Do you think about it from time to time?
Of course, I don't care about me at all. I'm happy, but I would love to have something of my mother's. Yes,
for sure.
Yeah.
Now, so you stayed in South Texas until about the 80s. What was your decision to come to Austin? Why did you decide to do that?
The TxDOT had their monthly highway lettings where they put out all their construction work to bid over a 2-day period, once a month, every month. And so we would come and typically stay 3 to 4 days because you had to collect data from subcontractors, material suppliers, and so on to prepare your bids and submit them and so on. And everything was manual at that time. We didn't do anything digitally. I had done some construction work in South Texas for some developers that were developing Lakeway, and said we ought to come out and have a look. I think I bought a lot out there probably in early 70s or mid 70s. I mean, they were just getting started. It could have even been in the late 60s. But I realized that I liked it. It was pretty, and why not have a second home there? But then it segued to why not have the first home there and go back to the valley occasionally. Plus, I was expanding my companies in such a way that I needed to give them independence and force them to be more independent and me withdraw somewhat from it. So it was a perfect combination.
You said you've started 16 companies. Is that correct?
14.
14?
14. Yeah.
How many did you have at once? How many companies was the maximum you ever held at once?
Probably 5 or 6.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yes. There were primarily complementary companies. My philosophy, because geographically, if you look at the Rio Grande Valley, you can't go east, it's the Gulf of Mexico. You can't go south, it's Old Mexico. You can only go so far to the west in a fan, and so far to the north. So instead of having a circle that you can build geographically grow, I developed a philosophy that I would rather grow through scope rather than geography. So I started adding business. At the end of any given year, I would look at the largest account payable for the year and say, we need to get in that business. That's a metaphor but fairly accurate. So that's how this came to be, that they were mainly complementary businesses.
Sure. That's wonderful. It's a vertical diversification versus horizontal diversification.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Very cool. And so when you got to Austin, how did you connect with the good folks at the Austin Jazz Society?
Well, I was a part of helping get that going actively. It had been in existence, but passively, no membership at all. They just needed some crazy people, primarily Tom Van Tassel, that was willing. Tom and I, got together with some of the great musicians in town, and I will say this, that there are some of the finest musicians in this area that I have ever imagined, and the finest people. I mean, really, really, really great folks. But after we had a few initial meetings, and people like Mike Mordecai got on board, and so many of them. But Tom, from the business standpoint, the organizational point, the point, because this is something that's going to take time, so it needs a retired person. My wife says, I'm the busiest retired person she's ever seen. I've got something going on all the time. Well, Tom's that kind of a person too, Van Tassel. And he's really, really been instrumental in this. So really, this has just been something that's going on actively for about 10 years.
That's wonderful.
But with the physical problems that Tony Campisi went through, that it lit a light, a candle that needed to be to grow, to expand, because there's such a need for exposing the area to this wonderful art and taking care of the artists that do it, and it's a circle, and so that's what got I take no credit for the Austin Jazz Society. That's something that I recognized the need for, but people that did the work are still doing the work.
I was going to ask you about Tony Campisi. I know you first met him in Houston. Tell me about your friendship with Tony.
In his words, it became a brotherhood. I think that probably he loved Betty better than me, and who wouldn't? And she him as well. But I had heard Tony before the Kenton era, and admired his work. And I was still active. That was back in the early 70s, when I was working with the high school bands, the high school band was, and we became acquaintances, and then I followed him on the Kenton band, and when he came back to Austin, well, it was just a bonanza. Hey, I'm out here, and you're there, and we just began to hang together, and it was so sweet because when Tony would spend days working on the baritone sax, because as you know or may not know, he was a master of every wind instrument, 3 flutes and a piccolo, and all the saxophones and clarinets that exist. He would call and say, "Hey, Paul, man, I've been working on my baritone chops, and I want to see if you think I sound like Jerry Mulligan. Can I come out? Come on out." And we just, I don't know, we just developed a friendship, and his words of brotherhood.
That's amazing. And the fact that you would have such bonds of friendship and such dedication to each other and to jazz itself and to this community is really quite inspiring. I think, Paul, I think I'm right. You just celebrated a milestone birthday. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Did you? How
Yes,
did you? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, February the 6th, I was 90 years old. Yeah.
Did you? I know that times don't lend themselves to grandiose celebrations. How did you mark this occasion?
Well, I have 4 wonderful friends, couples, here in our little subdivision that are holed up just like we are, playing it safe, that we were very comfortable to be with. And they were so generous to insist on having a little party for the 10 of us at one of their homes on the night before, February the 5th. And it was just magnificent. They had every ode to 1931 that you can imagine. Everything, all the famous movies from that time, all the famous music from that time, all the famous historical facts from that date, and so on. And then everything 90 that you can imagine. 90 is only 30 with 60 years experience, and so on, all over the house. It was great. And then again, Tom Van Tassel put together, he zoomed and made a DVD of all of our family. There are 30 of us, 30 and 7/8, 7/9. We're going to have a new great-grandson in April. Wow. So he had every one of our family members and 32, I think, of our friends from all over, from New York and Crested Butte, Colorado, and all on a DVD wishing me happy birthday. So that was great. On Saturday morning, my real birthday, we were headed down to see our daughter and son-in-law in Canyon Lake, just an hour and 15 minutes down the road, to have a more private, just the 4 of us, low-key family birthday. Got to the front gate, and there's a huge banner on the gate, "Happy Birthday," with balloons. Still don't know where they came from. We then drove on down to Canyon Lake, and my daughter had arranged a history of me. She had a photograph with my mother's writing on the back, Paul at 48 hours. And from there, every phase of my life through grade school, high school, college, Army, pictures of me with bands, all the way to that day, scattered out around the room. And we had a wonderful weekend together. So perfectly. I give you a long answer for a simple question, don't I?
Well, it's obviously dear to your heart. So if somebody was coming up and they're, let's say, a horn player who loves big band, what advice would you give to them today?
Well, it depends on if they want to be an educator. and have the gift. This is a gift. Everybody can't do this. You know, these people that are teaching music, like Jeff Helmer and John Frimgen and Butch Miles, and these guys, you know, are amazing to have not just the ability to perform, but to teach, to give. Those people should be studying music and preparing themselves to do that. The people that are just exquisite performers and are just so good that they, you know, that they just have to go, just keep on working and go to a fine university like the University of Texas. How about North Texas and Denton, you know, or Berkeley or somewhere, get all the Juilliard. They're you know, great music schools where they can learn from people like Jeff and John. But and go as far as you can. But for someone that wants to continue to perform, again, I have to say both. But it isn't sure. If you're on that borderline, find a way to a career, even if it's just helping yourself with your music. So again, I have to say both. There's a little dive out here called Angel's Ice House. It's a cool place. They have an angel burger, and when they ask you, you know, what kind of cheese do you want? You know, they say, do you want Swiss or cheddar? You say both. That's, you know, they ask you if you want French fries or onion rings. The best answer is both. And when I'm asked to talk to the students that are in the fine musical organizations at A&M, and I want to touch on that before I leave, because I don't want to digress off this point, but when I'm asked to talk to them, you know, I say, you know, throughout your career, because, you know, 70 years ago, I was sitting there and I managed this, but when you have to choose between this career in engineering you're taking, or in biomedical science, or whatever incredible career pursuits you're doing, and your music, don't ever give up the one for the other. Say both, and you can do both. Back what I wanted to say about the music program at A&M, and these people that are teaching over there, understand they don't offer a music degree, but they have some of the finest musical groups in the nation. And the reason is that they're selecting from the entire student body. I mean, imagine how many kids are former All-State players, but either of their own volition or their parents' insistence are pursuing a degree outside of music. So when you go out to audition for the wind ensemble, I mean, you know, you're collecting from 60,000 kids. You're going to get together a pretty good group, and with the leaders and teachers, and now the facilities with the new music activity center, which is just incredible. It's you know, it's pretty sweet. But there again, if you're determined to be a musician, either you're talented, you feel you're talented enough to be a frontline performer, or you have the tools and the heart to be a teacher, then you maybe need a backup career. I hope I'm not, you know, in any way diminishing one's desire for music, because you don't have to give it up. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, I'm proof you don't have to give it up.
Well, you've really distinguished yourself in the 90 years, and please God, with continued good health. What's next on the horizon for you? What project are you thinking about? What do you hope to accomplish? What do you hope to read? What do you hope to play or listen to?
Yeah, whatever God brings me. My mental door and my spiritual door and my heart is open. Show me what's next.
So you're just open to whatever might come your way.
and what feels right. My mother said, base your decisions on wisdom, economy, and brotherly love, and then pursue it and follow the lights. If you have a green light, keep going. If you have an amber light, look both ways. And if you have a red light, you stop. So that's what I do. And I just follow the lights.
Well, may your lights always be green, Paul. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm very, very blessed, Neil. I have so many gifts. I have way more than I give.
Do you have any advice for any of us who are listening and are just intrigued by your life and the great direction you gave us to have both onion rings and French fries? How do we recognize the lights? How do we know when it's amber or green? It might look different. I'm colorblind, so it might look a little different to you than it does to me.
Yeah. You more than I know who I'm talking to. A rabbi, you're not colorblind. You recognize the lights. You open your heart and your mind, and you'll hear. You'll be told.
So before COVID, I'm sure you love to travel with Betty, and you like to get different places.
We've canceled 6 trips so far. Well, actually, only 4. One of a 5th one 3 times.
So where are you hankering to get to?
The trips that we have planned right now are in. One is in Eastern Europe, primarily Poland and Eastern Germany. One is to the Festival of the Arts in Laguna Beach, California, with a grandson and his wife, and one is to Croatia and Serbia and some more of the Eastern countries. And that's the end of this year. We'll see. And then we have a trip to Portugal booked April of 2022. I only signed up, just to be clear on this, I only signed up for another 10 years, but I did take an option for 5 more. It cost a little more, but it was worth it. So I've got the 10 years booked with the option for 5.
Well, in my tradition, we say, may you live to 120 in good health and peace. So you've got a little bit more, God willing, than just 10 plus 5. So hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Do you have anything you want to ask or anything you want to share before we close?
Oh, I can ask this question off the record, but I'm just wondering, what are you doing? I mean, what are we doing? What's your project here?
So that's a great question. So I've been asked by AJS, by Austin Jazz Society, by Mike Mordecai and Tom, to interview those who are part of the Hall of Fame of the Austin Jazz Society, in order for us to have a record and a way of connecting and learning from those who have been able to teach and to be influential in such a wonderful way. So my project is, there are 10 of you, and I'm in a series of interviews. They asked me to do it for some reason. I don't know why, but they have. And we'll have the 10 interviews, and then hopefully expand the idea a little bit more so people can get to know the honorees of the Hall of Fame.
Well, I think you don't know the reason why they picked you. I think the reason is you're pretty good at it. You mentioned 10. Let me say one more thing about an 11th, and that would be Tony.
Sure.
I think this is worth quoting, but Tony had a bit of an issue with his parents about his music. As you know, I'm sure most, or not most, well, a lot of musicians whose parents aren't musicians themselves, let's say, have. But this is, I'm getting to an actual quote from Tony, but his dad was kind of reprimanding him about, Tony, you just need to get a real job, let's say. And, you have to quit this or whatever. But Tony's quote, I had to tell my father at that time that God gave me this gift. I would be disrespectful not to use it. So I think that's, there's a quote from the 11th of your Hall of Famers that is, very, very significant, because if you have the gift, you really do need to exercise it and use it. Now, as a primary career, as a secondary, as whatever, but don't give it up. Don't lose it. Don't, whatever it takes to keep it active. And I think, part of what this Austin Jazz Society is about is educating and illuminating and promoting and exposing musicians to the opportunity to perform, and an audience with an opportunity to learn and grow. And
very well said, Paul.
Can you dig it?
Let me ask you one last question then, if that's all right with you, just for now. At the beginning of our conversation, we were looking at books and sort of comparing a little bit, and you're in your library, and you the first place you sort of gestured, you said, this is my sort of religious or spiritual or Bible section. Tell me a little bit about if you don't mind, if you do, that's okay, but a little bit about your spiritual journey, about your spirituality, and how that has informed such a remarkable life of yours.
I'm going to go back to my upbringing and my mom. Again, my dad was a strong influence in my life, but he wasn't there all the time like my mother was. Of course, I mean, he was in the construction business, the Depression, World War II. He was a busy man, and he worked for a great company and had a great relationship and a great career. But we had a little bitty house, our own house, and it had a little screened-in porch in the back, and a blackboard on the wall. And my mom would, every day, only 5 days a week, school days, she would write a word and the definition out of Webster's dictionary, just a word and its definition. And then she would write a spiritual citation out of the Bible. And it was my job to learn that word, to use it 3 times during the day, and to learn that Bible citation. So this is where I come from.
Wow, that's such a powerful lesson.
So not only did I listen to Gallagher's a great deal during the day, but I also had a little challenge. And at one time, Neil, and again, this comes back just like playing a musical instrument. If you don't practice, it doesn't work. And I haven't exercised my vocabulary, and I lose it. But I did know. I did have a really, and it was a great gift. It helped me a great deal later. Another thing that I had to learn at A&M as a ROTC was to remember names. I've lost that a great deal too, and I'm disappointed in myself for not practicing those skills more. The horn, I should practice. My vocabulary, I should practice. Remembering names, I should practice. But I guess it can get a little lazy at night, maybe.
Well, I think all things that rise will converge again, and I think that it's not an absolute scale. So as you're concentrating on other things, you're learning new skills as well. I certainly have found that.
Sure.
I've really enjoyed our
looking forward to meeting. I have met you. I shook your hands at one of the Sunday jazz concerts, but I'm looking forward to a little more intimate meeting. Yeah.
I would like that, Paul, very much.
When it's less about me, more about interesting things.
Well, I've really been taken by what you've said, and I really appreciate. I've long admired Claude Thornhill, and just your particular connection, and just the way that you've made your choices in your life, and the values that you stand for, and the ways that you've chosen to integrate your various interests is something that I hold to quite deeply. So I'm honored to have this time with you, and I do, Paul, look forward to, hopefully, God willing, a friendship that will strengthen.
I would love that, Neil, and I want to thank you, and I want to be certain that that my wish is that if any of my comments can be of any help to someone, that's really the only purpose. This isn't about me; it's about what we can do for this beautiful, beautiful art.
I'll take it. Agreed. I think it will be. I think you should be confident that that will be the case.